One of the leading camera manufacturers in the early 1960s was a company which completely disappeared by 83, 84, and that was the company known as Topcon. And Topcon made some really sophisticated cameras in the early 60s. Unfortunately, by the time we get to 78, they seem to have slightly diminished, and they were producing this camera, the RM300, which I think was probably produced by the same company as the Cassinas. It's very similar to the Cassina in body and function. And basically what we have is a manual camera. We load the camera manually. Focus, which was this is very typical of a camera of that period of 1978. We have a plus and minus LED in the viewfinder. The previous Topcons had been the Exacta mount, which is a bayonet, where this is actually, wait for it, is a Pentax K, which was very popular at that time. So it's a nice and straightforward lens mount. This is a more sophisticated model because I've got the motor drive on here. We have a hot shoe for the flash, plus we also have a flash connector, which is quite useful. The camera is nicely produced. The motor rind I don't particularly like. It feels a bit plastically compared to the ME Super motor rind of the time. The quality doesn't quite seem to be there, but the actual camera itself is really nicely made. It's a nice finish, it feels solid. I always think a good thing of a telltale sign of a good design is how good the rewind lever is, and it should be easy, but in some cameras it can sometimes be difficult to wind the film back. This is very straightforward to wind the film back. Shutter speeds are from bulb, 1 second, half a second, quarter, 1/8, and on to 1,000th of a second. Let's see how I got on when I went out and used it. The first photo is a little bit overexposed, but the detail is good and the actual sharpness I was really pleased with. I'm not sure if there was an error in the user or the camera. This is better on exposure. It's of a it's called a finger post. It's like a signpost, but it has its grid reference, so you can reference the map and find out exactly where you are. I'm in North Dorset. I love these ancient road signs. I say ancient, they date back to about the 1920s, but they are beautifully produced and really useful for telling you where you need to go. The camera I'm finding really nice to use. It had a better feel in the use I found than when I first sort of picked it up. The light meter was very responsive. The lens is proving to be quite sharp. The motor rind actually proved to be really useful. This was a camera I wasn't really expecting to like. However, as soon as I started to use it, it sort of took me back to those 1980s days. And you have got a manual camera which is very straightforward to read. And I remember at the time people weren't sure whether the plus and minus in LED form was maybe a backward step, because cameras before then you had a straightforward needle in the meter in the viewfinder, but as I said, it became common practice to replace the needle with a red and a green LED. But as I said, in this model of Topcon I found it to work extremely well. I think the argument was that sometimes you couldn't actually see the LED. As you can see, it's quite a bright evening when I'm taking these photographs, and I had no problem at all seeing the LED. It was well lit. I'm using my favourite film of, well, I say favourite, the cheapest film of former 100, and it's developed in ID11. I do still get questions asked, why am I not using colour film? Well, I'm not using colour film because colour film C41 to process is a bit of a pain to process it by yourself, and I deliberately like to process the film myself because I've got that control. So it's partly control and it's partly price, and there is a slight artistic thing, I hope. I just like using black and white. It's seeing in black and white is slightly different. You're looking for the real quality of light, I think. So there we are, the RM300 Topcon. I might have called it a 3000 at the start, but it's a 300. Bye for now.